Hello, everybody. My name is Damon Stanwell-Smith. I'm the Head of Science and Sustainability in Viking Expeditions. You may recognise me from some of the Viking.TV presentations. And I've been with Viking since July 2019. And today, I'd like to talk with you about one of our new signature voyages. In Viking Expeditions, we have been planning expeditions up to the Svalbard Arctic, down to the Antarctic Peninsula, to the Great Lakes of North America, and in the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean in between. And this voyage that we're discussing is going to be a 44-day odyssey from the far north through to the far south, with experiencing all sorts of interesting wildlife, scenery, seascapes, and a wonderful time on our new beautiful expedition vessels. Today, we will focus on one of our signature expedition voyages. It's called From the Arctic to the Antarctic, which is clearly self-descriptive. In 44 days, we're sailing from one end of the Earth to the other, from the far north to the extreme south. And we're going to start with introducing Viking Expeditions with a video that is about 15 minutes long. So I look forward to joining you after the video and we'll discuss the destination and itinerary.
Centuries ago, the Vikings established a tradition of exploration that took them to Europe, Russia, the Middle East, and the shores of North America. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, intrepid Norwegians again led the way, exploring the vast, largely unknown polar regions. This heritage of firsts continues with Viking. We first popularized river cruising, then reinvented the ocean voyage, and now we're leading the way once more with journeys to the extraordinary. Introducing Viking Expeditions. Thoughtfully curated, refreshingly innovative, once-in-a-lifetime experiences in the wilds of the Arctic, Antarctica, and the Great Lakes, nestled in the heart of North America.
These are places that very few people will ever have the privilege of visiting, which is why it's so important for us to deliver the very best experience we possibly can to our guests. It's experiences that create memories for a lifetime, but also hopefully give them another lens through which they view our beautiful world.
Our Antarctic Explorer is a fascinating 13-day journey, introducing our guests to this majestic continent.
It is truly the greatest wilderness on the planet. In a world of nearly 8 billion people, that's a continent the size of North America that has not yet been colonized.
Its many wonders revealed to our guests by knowledgeable Viking experts.
It is somewhere that you viscerally experience, feeling the wind, feeling the isolation. You might have seen a sunrise before, but not like an Antarctic one. You might have seen bioluminescence before, but not like you'll see in the Southern Ocean. It's like with the volume dialed to 11.
During the Antarctic summer, the bitter cold weather gives way to long daylight hours and relatively mild weather, making it the perfect time to explore the many remarkable aspects of this pristine environment.
Seeing wildlife that is completely not scared of human beings. To see those in their natural habitat, in such abundance, in such a wild place, is quite an experience unlike anything else on the planet.
With extensive programs both on board and on shore, our guests will enjoy an unprecedented immersion into the grandeur of the last continent. At the top of the world, our Arctic adventure itinerary takes our guests to Svalbard and the edge of the polar ice cap. For 13 days of unending exploration, they'll experience the stark, haunting beauty of the Arctic in the Svalbard archipelago, lands of rugged fjords, and much, much more.
The scenery is so unusual. The sea ice, the glaciers and the ice sheets are so outside of most people's normal experience. It is a completely different world. You really feel as though you're as far away as you possibly can be from civilization. And indeed you are.
In Svalbard, Viking guests will enjoy dramatic ice-sculpted landscapes in this ever-changing region. It's a robust ecosystem that bursts with life and activity for just a few precious months each year. This is a rare opportunity to search for nature's most elusive creatures under the lingering midnight sun. Beyond the breathtaking wildlife and raw beauty, our guests will explore other aspects of Svalbard, including remote outposts like Barentsburg, a Russian coal mining town carved from the wilderness. Mining thrived in Longyearbyen, Svalbard's capital, too, and our guests can step into this world below the surface. Or they can learn about Svalbard's important global seed bank as part of their fascinating adventure in the Arctic. Tucked into the border of the United States and Canada is an immense, deeply complex ecosystem where the world's largest body of fresh water stretches far beyond the horizon. The Great Lakes encompass more than 94,000 square miles. Viking now covers all of them with 4 intriguing itineraries. Voyages that explore their vast coastlines and stunning beauty.
We are going to learn more about the nature. We're going to make sure that we open the destinations to our guests in the way of interpreting what we see, in the way of explaining the natural phenomena.
With extensive programs on board and on shore, both above and below the surface, our guests will enjoy an unparalleled opportunity to learn more about the region, its pioneering past, along with its rich indigenous heritage, traditions and culture.
We're going to have scientists, we're going to have senior lecturers that cover history, geology, biology, bringing everybody on board to a higher level of understanding.
It's part of our commitment to ensure Viking guests experience this spectacular region in a way most never will. The polar regions and the Great Lakes are rare treasures that really shouldn't be missed, and Viking's approach is unlike any other.
The Viking way of exploring the world is designed to allow our guests to not only observe, but very much engage with the world. And you'll see that in our expeditions experiences, which set a whole new standard.
These are the thinking person's expeditions. We believe travel should be a doorway to insight and new discoveries. And every crew member on our expedition ships is committed to making those moments happen.
While some merely cruise to these places, with Viking Expeditions, you are on an expedition ship, you're getting knowledgeable lecturers, bringing to life the history of the place and putting these places in a global context.
Before our guests travel, we recommend carefully curated reading materials and filmographies that inform and enlighten. And once the journey begins, our guests will find world-class lectures, access to experts, and extensive daily briefings.
Our aim is to always deliver extraordinary experiences wherever in the world our guests are sailing with us, and that there is always an educational component. I think we all aspire to know more, not less. And in the case of our expeditions experiences, there is a lot to learn.
Sharing these lands requires expertise. To help our guests best explore and understand these unrivaled destinations, we've assembled a world-class expedition team to lead and assist in these pristine places. Leaving our guests free to be curious, to learn and to explore in comfort, surrounded by the company of like-minded travellers.
We have an internal motto: if we can't do things well, we won't do it at all. And when it comes to our expeditions project, there are 3 critical components. It's the hardware, the ship, it's the software, the experts, and it's our partners.
To explore the world's most remote regions, there are 2 purpose-built, cutting-edge expedition-class ships, Viking Octantis and Viking Polaris. Inside our 378 guests will find serene Scandinavian interiors, plus panoramic views at every turn. And they'll experience all the comfort and elegance of our award-winning ocean fleet, including many of the beloved existing spaces so unique to Viking. When it comes to accommodations, there are 3 Nordic balcony stateroom categories, plus spacious Nordic balcony junior suites, explorer suites, and an owner suite.
Because we do have the most capable ship you can imagine, we will have so many opportunities. We are going to be able to put ourselves into those very favorable situations of being where the wildlife is, being where the ice is, and where it all happens.
To complement our advanced expedition ships, we hand-picked experts to lead our guests in these extraordinary environments. Our skilled expedition team consists of over 25 experts in their fields, each well-versed on the unique geography, geology, and wildlife our guests will encounter. They'll share insights and teach guests about these delicate ecosystems and the importance of preserving them for generations to come.
With the right expert by your side, you really can have an amazing experience, and worlds will open to you that you didn't even realize existed. I didn't realize that I was interested in flowers. Our leader handed me a microscopic monocular and had me focus in on a little saxifraga. That's an Arctic flower. And all of a sudden, I was transferred into this world of beauty, of color and pollen, and it was unbelievable.
To further enhance our enrichment program and commitment to destination-focused learning, we've also partnered with some of the world's most renowned institutions.
We're very pleased and proud and honored that several of the world's leading institutions within the fields of marine biology, botany, ornithology, glaciology, and atmospheric sciences have signed on. So we feel very fortunate and very credible in our efforts.
We are setting the bar at a new level. We are convinced there's not going to be others that have that level of education on board.
When it comes to itineraries, our expeditions in the polar regions are different from the set schedules of Viking's ocean and river ships.
Our itineraries are, of course, planned, but you can't dictate to nature. You cannot dictate the weather, you cannot dictate animal migration or appearances, so we are very flexible, such that we can seize the opportunity to capture those great moments when they happen.
While the itineraries are more structured on our Great Lakes voyages, Viking's unwavering commitment to discovery and learning is the same on all our expeditions, providing our guests with significant opportunities to immerse themselves in their surroundings. sending them home with memories they'll forever treasure.
I like to make sure that we are taking advantage of the serendipitous happenings and events that is going on in nature. That's why we've planned plenty of time. We are not in a rush to get from one place to another. The wildlife, the culture, and the things we observe set the agenda on our voyages. What we do end up with is a unique trip every single time we sail out.
Viking Expeditions is one more step in our drive to introduce our guests to as much of the world as possible.
Ultimately, our goal is to share with our guests more of the destination, more of the nature, more of the culture, more of the animals, more of the people. Let them get closer.
With the launch of Viking Expeditions, our guests will now be able to sail to the farthest reaches of the globe and explore closer to home. It's exploration the Viking way, in complete comfort.
What I like people to feel is that they become a part of the expedition team. You know, we're making this voyage together.
We'd like our guests to return home with much more than pretty pictures. That's nice too, but the experience should be profound.
Well, I do hope that you enjoyed Viking Expeditions overview video, showing all the things that we're setting out to do. Now let's look at the itinerary. So for the voyage from the Arctic to Antarctica, we begin in Tromsø in Norway in the high Arctic, and we conclude in the south in Ushuaia in Argentina, which is the world's southernmost city. In the 44 days of the voyage, you will visit 3 continents and 9 countries. The itinerary also includes 19 days of scenic sailing for a front row seat for some of the world's most beautiful scenery, and time on board to relax in the spa, to enjoy just having those days at sea, and to learn more about the history of exploration, about science, about interesting wildlife from our resident team of experts as you cross the equator. Before we explore more about the voyage itinerary, let's look at the pre-extension packages. If you'd like to arrive early to get orientated and experience more of Northern Europe prior to your sailing, we have 3 pre-extensions arranged. Firstly, we have 5 nights available to explore Sami culture in Finnmark in Norway. So where you can venture high above the Arctic Circle to discover the people of Finnmark. There's informative museum visits. There's some wonderful storytelling. You could go out with sled dogs and also see the Alta Cathedral, known as the Northern Lights Cathedral. Second package is a 5-night to explore the undiscovered Iceland. So Iceland really is surreal. There's absolutely unforgettable wilderness when you travel around there like nowhere else on Earth, with the natural wonders like the waterfalls of the Gullfoss and Gullfoss. And indeed, you can rejuvenate in a hot spring in the land of fire and ice. We also have a third package, which is a 2-night package to explore the Norwegian capital, Oslo, with its wonderful museums and sort of beautiful setting, very relaxed. And of course, there's the cultural side of exploring the magnificent work of the expressionist painter Edvard Munch in his namesake museum. Let's look at an itinerary map for more on this voyage. So embarking in Tromsø, then there's several days in Norway, and then we're heading southwest across to the Shetland Islands, to Scotland, round to Ireland in the west, and then England. And then crossing the Atlantic Ocean crossing the equator, making that landfall in Rio de Janeiro, and discovering Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, across to the Falkland Islands, and then down to Antarctica. And then, having been in Antarctica, we'll sail back across the Drake Passage to Ushuaia in Tierra del Fuego in Argentina. So it's just like the migration of an Arctic tern will be in that same Arctic through to Antarctic odyssey. So a few words about the weather and what to pack. So this itinerary is currently offered in September, which is at the end of the Arctic summer. So there will be some opportunities to see wildlife as migratory birds take off and polar bears prepare to den. Also, nights are beginning to darken around this time of year. So you may have an opportunity to see northern lights within the Arctic Circle. In contrast, in the Antarctic, it is the windiest continent on Earth, and so it's very unpredictable. It's always worth dressing in layers. And so, given the nature of all our expedition voyages, you'll want to pack quick drying and waterproof clothing and accessories. And of course, we will provide full guidance to assist with your packing to cover all the eventualities on this amazing voyage. I'd also like to say a few words about our new expedition ships. We have applied more than 2 decades of experience and expertise in river and ocean voyages to look at making the perfect hotel environment on board, and decades of experience from expeditionary operations from all the new personnel that are working with Viking Expeditions to create the perfect expedition experience, which we hope will live up to our commitment to keep you exploring the world in comfort. Here is a quote from the famous Norwegian explorer Roald Amundsen that speaks to the intention and thought behind the design of our brand new state-of-the-art Polar Class 6, so that's the ice strengthening expedition vessels, Viking Octantis and Viking Polaris. Amundsen said, "I may say that this is the greatest factor, the way in which the expedition is equipped, the way in which every difficulty is foreseen and precautions taken for meeting or avoiding it. Victory awaits him who has everything in order." So for expedition voyages, Viking is proud to introduce our 2 new purpose-built vessels optimally designed for expeditions. They're small enough to navigate remote areas, yet large enough to provide speed, superior handling and stability in the roughest seas. Throughout the ships, there's a focus on panoramic views. You'll be as close as possible to the most majestic scenery on Earth. I'd like to show you now a short video about how we designed the ships.
Creating an expedition ship worthy of the Viking name is no small endeavour, especially when our award-winning ocean and river fleet have set such high standards. When designing vessels to bring our guests to the ends of the earth and back, every part of the ship operations and guest experience has to be carefully considered, and every step of the way guided by our chairman Torstein Hagen, whose attention to detail is second to none. To optimize safety, comfort and guest flow, the design process was, as usual, an ongoing collaboration of many people, involving our maritime architects, interior designers and all key departments at Viking. It's a global effort, tapping the expertise and experience of our nautical and technical staff, expedition leaders, enrichment officers, food and beverage, and hotel operations. The goal? To ensure that when our guests set off to explore the world with us, they'll enjoy the same onboard ambiance and our commitment to learning and discovery that's long distinguished Viking from others. Construction begins with the ceremonial first cutting of steel at the shipyard. The next major milestone is the keel laying. This marks the first joining of modular components. It's celebrated with an age-old tradition and a coin from the ship's owner. The coin is meant to bring good fortune when it's welded to the vessel. This is recognized as the moment the ship first comes to life. Stay tuned for the next update on the building of your expedition ship.
So I'd like now to say a few words about our new expedition features. This image shows a render of the laboratory space. And if you look through the windows, you're looking down into the hangar. So that's showing where various of our off-ship vessels are being stored. So if we just go through those, we'll have a substantial fleet of Zodiacs, the rubber boats with the go anywhere, very tough, if you like, the land cruisers of the boat world. We'll have 2 ribs. These are going to be 40-foot long, so it's 13-meter long, cabined, ice-strengthened aluminium twin water-jet ribs, one of which has been designated as a survey vessel, and both vessels will be launched out of the aft of the ship on the inboard slipway, which is a sort of 100-foot long inboard slipway, which is a unique feature in expedition vessels. We also have a fleet of 2-seater sit-aboard kayak. We have 2 6-guest submersibles, and we have the scientific space, which is as shown here, which is going to be a place where guests can also interact with our resident scientists and the research that's going on board, which I'll talk about later. So there's easy launch access. We have 9 shell doors around the ship to enable launching simultaneously all the different tendering tools. The onboard laboratory will have both research and citizen science programs. And I'm going to show you now a short video about the hangar so you can see the operation of our in-ship slipway marina, which is shelter from wind and waves. So let's talk about shore excursions. If you've travelled with Viking before, you know that we have the most knowledgeable guides. Here, you'll travel with a team of resident specialists, expedition specialists, including resident scientists. The science on board is a really important aspect of your experience during your excursions, with experiential activities, with fieldwork opportunities, laboratory opportunities, all occurring while you're on board. On our expedition itineraries, virtually all excursions are included in your voyage fare to ensure that you maximise your discoveries. With all our activities, we'll be in small groups with specialist guidance. Our excursions include everything from rib voyages through to Zodiac landings, tranquil kayak outings, and submarine dives. You'll have the opportunity to hike through magnificent landscapes and access remote areas, all led by a team of experts who are professionally skilled in safe operations in these rugged and polar environments. You'll also have the opportunity to try the unique experience of our exclusive limited capacity optional excursions as well. Viking has partnered with some leading globally recognised institutions to enrich your experience. So these are our academic and scientific partnerships. We have a partnership with the Cambridge University's Scott Polar Research Institute, and indeed we'll have scientists from the institute undertaking fieldwork on board. We have partnered with the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, which is a world-class bird research facility, and we will have ornithologists guided by them on board, field testing new observation methods and providing advice to our guests. We have a partnership with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, specifically the Great Lakes Environmental Research Laboratory, although we will be working with other laboratories as well across their portfolio of different expertise. And NOAA is an agency, a scientific agency within the United States Department of Commerce that focuses on the conditions of oceans, major waterways, and the atmosphere. And we will have a number of projects that are collaborations with NOAA that guests will be able to interact with. And our partner institutions will be providing Viking resident scientists. So on every journey, you'll be accompanied by a team of 24 experts, including our expedition specialists and our resident scientists, who will be ranged from biologists, botanists, geologists, glaciologists, oceanographers, and ornithologists, as well as polar specialists, higher predator, wildlife biologists, and researchers. The scientists will be working on our onboard laboratory and undertaking fieldwork, and we'll offer guests a unique opportunity to learn about and participate in ongoing live research. Now let's explore some key ports of call along our 44-day itinerary from the Arctic to Antarctica. Day 1. Welcome to Tromsø, where your voyage begins. Some of you may join us after your pre-extension stay. Others will join in Europe today. If you've arranged air travel through Viking, we will transfer you from the airport to your waiting expedition ship. After boarding and settling into your stateroom, you might have time to explore Tromsø. This city is dubbed the gateway to the Arctic. Its most famous landmark is the Arctic Cathedral, as shown here, this wonderful modernist building. Or you may wander the city's quaint and colourful streets, soaking up the sights of humble wooden architecture and spellbinding neoclassical buildings. We'll sail from Tromsø to the archipelago in the Arctic Circle of Lofotens. And here we can learn about sea fishing and use traditional Norwegian fishing equipment to catch a variety of fish, including cod, pollock, and mackerel, just as local fishermen have been doing for hundreds of years. We can also venture through the archipelago of the islands using our ribs, zodiacs, and kayaks, keeping watch for bird and marine life, including spectacular sea eagles. The Lofoten archipelago is high in the Arctic Circle and is a bird watcher's paradise. There's seabirds in abundance. For example, is cormorant here, and there's puffins, there's other native seabirds, and the opportunities for exploring the islands and cliffs by the small boats will give unprecedented opportunities for those that are wildlife lovers. So heading south and west from Norway, we are heading to the British Isles, to the archipelagos of Britain, and you'll gather from my accent, this is my home area. I spent a lot of time around these islands. They're beautiful, beautiful places. So firstly, we'll go to the Shetland Islands, which are in the far north of the UK, and specifically in Scotland. And here you can meet the famous four-legged residents of the Shetlands and enjoy a close-up encounter. You can learn how these miniature ponies are bred and used, and we'll be able to explore the waters for seabirds and marine mammals using all our ribs and zodiacs on board. I'd like to show you now a short film about Shetland horses.
The wind-swept Shetland Islands, where the Atlantic Ocean collides with the North Sea, is home to some unique and fascinating characters.
I was born and bred in the house that I'm still in, and I've stayed in Shetland all my life.
Carol Fuller is a wrangler and breeder whose family has long loved the island's iconic residents.
There have been 3 generations that's had the Shetland ponies. They're part of my life.
While the Shetland pony dates to the Bronze Age, it was primarily breeding with Døle ponies brought by the Vikings that created the sprightly breed we see today.
Oh, their spirits is pretty high. They have high spirits. Everyone has a different personality. They're a big white one. She always stands with her head up, lugs up, and ears up and everything. See me.
Though the hardy Shetland pony has long thrived here, its life has rarely been easy.
When I was young, the ponies wasn't for fun, they were work horses. All the craft work was done on the ponies, there were no tractors. They did the carting in the hay, carting in the corn, ploughing the rigs, everything was done on a pony.
And in 1847, when the British banned children from the coal mines, the tough Shetland pony went to work underground. For years they were in constant demand, since these resilient, sure-footed wonders could move loads of coal up to 3,000 miles a year.
They were usually down 2 weeks and up 2 weeks. The ponies was treated very well, and they said the ponies was treated much better than the men.
In such a spacious, relaxed setting, one could easily assume that raising the highly intelligent, extremely patient Shetland pony would be a piece of cake. I was quickly assured that was not the case.
No. You must be good to them. You have to be good to them. But you have to make sure that they know you're the boss. It's just like a dog.
Much like an artist who hates to part with their paintings, Carol often holds on to her ponies. They stay and become part of the family.
At one point, I had 6 generations. If they go from me as a foal, they go to some other body. But if they live past a year old, they're aside me for their life. My oldest mare was 35. She was a good old lady. She was a very good old lady.
One thing's for sure, Shetlands are highly addictive. They even hooked Queen Elizabeth, who rode them throughout her childhood. While these precocious ponies top out at only 42 inches, don't let their diminutive stature fool you. Pound for pound, they're actually the strongest of the horse family, able to pull twice their body weight. And one thing they're certainly not short of is personality.
I always say they're like the weather clock. Whichever way the wind is coming from, you'll always see them standing with their rear ends to the wind.
I hope you too will do as I did and pay a visit to Carol and her ponies in the remarkable Shetland Islands.
You may also wish to visit the ancient Jarlshof in Sumba, which is one of the most interesting complex archaeological sites ever excavated in Britain. It's more than 4,500 years old, and it features a remarkable sequence of stone structures from different eras. The Norse longhouse here tells the story of a thriving Viking community. And one of the things I like about the Shetlands is, in comparison to the islands to the south, which are the Orkney Islands, the Orkneys, the Orcadians that live in the Orkney Islands are known as farmers with boats, but the Shetlanders are known as sailors with cows. And I think that very much sums up the mindset of the Shetlander and how you'll have that opportunity to interact with them when you're visiting. From the Shetlands, we will then continue heading further south and west, and we will call in at Inishmore Island in Ireland. And here you can immerse yourself in Irish traditions as you delve into the language, culture and heritage of Ireland. This island is internationally renowned with more than 50 different monuments of Christian, pre-Christian and Celtic mythological heritage. It's wonderful for walking and indeed for cycling. There's lots of little stone-walled paths that you can go with, tiny little homesteads where seaweed is laid out to turn into soil to grow potatoes, and is a remarkable community. And the little trails you can explore around the Black Fort and other historic sites. It's a real gem. So from Ireland, we're sailing further south and coming to the far western tip of England. So we'll arrive at the Scilly Isles, which is an archipelago located 28 miles off the southwestern tip of Cornwall. And it's made up of 140 islands, of which 5 are inhabited. You'll have an opportunity to come ashore. The beaches of the Scilly Isles are famously white and are very beautiful, and to also explore a remarkable 19th century botanical gardens known as Tresco. So the climate on the Scilly Islands is unique in the British Isles because it supports the growing of a really wide variety of tropical plants. So you get the real mix of temperate and tropical. So it's an amazing experience for all the botanical enthusiasts. 17 acres of stunning tropical gardens and collections from Brazil to New Zealand and from Burma to South Africa. To continue in the Scilly Isles, you may wish to participate in a coastal hike on the Isle of St Mary's. You can explore Penennis Head, which is a headland within the Isles of Scilly area of outstanding natural beauty. This is recognised for scenic beauty and for biodiversity. These areas are managed by local authorities for the purposes of conservation, and it's very evocative of what the Scilly Isles is all about. If you look out to sea, there have been more shipwrecks around these troubled waters over centuries than anywhere else in the British Isles, and indeed one of the most shipwrecked areas in the whole world. So the waters are wild, but we'll be admiring them from the shore. Sailing on, we are now back in Irish waters. We're going to overnight in the city of Cork in southwest Ireland, and you'll be able to get to know the rebel city. You can choose to journey to the village of Blarney, the home of the historic castle and the famous Blarney Stone, where kissing that stone is said to bring you the gift of eloquence. Alternatively, you can delve into the world of whiskey. That's whiskey with an E, because it's Irish rather than Scottish, during a behind-the-scenes tour of the Jameson's distillery in Middleton. You can enjoy a tour of the distillery, you can learn about Jameson's signature triple distillation process, and of course, sample some of the water of life. From Cork, we then embark on the long scenic sailing leg across the Atlantic Ocean, that most classic of voyages. We're at the midway point of our voyage at this point, and we're sailing across into the Southern Hemisphere. So after many days of exploring the north, this is possibly the perfect time to relax with a treatment at our spa. As we continue on these 12 days across the Atlantic, we're showing an image here of the hangar and showing some of the boats, because the facility to be able to launch our ribs from the stern of the vessel will enable us to do mid-ocean rib voyages, assuming the weather is calm. But we get very calm weathers often crossing the Atlantic, so we look forward to taking you out in mid-ocean rib adventures. And here is our lecture theatre on board, which we have called our aula, which is after the Old Norse and Old Greek name for an educational amphitheatre for learning. Here you can attend a lecture from the ship's resident experts on a variety of relevant subjects to keep you interested and engaged as we sail across the world's second largest ocean. I'd like to show you now a short animation of just how this extraordinary space operates. having crossed the equator into the southern hemisphere, you'll make that most traditional and romantic of landfalls, touching land in Rio de Janeiro. You'll see the iconic Christ the Redeemer statue atop Corcovado Mountain and admire the azure blue waters as they lap against the beaches of Copacabana and Ipanema. And you may get a different perspective of this magnificent city's famous landmarks and beaches during a kayak excursion, or indeed by helicopter. With an overnight here, you'll have plenty of time to get to know the city. From Rio, we will be heading south along the South American eastern seaboard to another traditional and classic landfall, to the evocative city of Buenos Aires. So this is Argentina's capital, and we'll have an overnight here. So there'll be many opportunities to explore the city's culture. You can catch a live tango performance in the city's cobblestones back streets, or relax with a glass of Argentine red Malbec wine, and of course a very nice steak. It is often easy to forget you're in a big city, as the many barrios or neighbourhoods exude a very intimate atmosphere. From Buenos Aires, we also have a unique 2-day excursion with an overnight hotel stay to Iguazu Falls, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it's where 3 countries meet. So the falls are the meeting point of Brazil, Argentina and Paraguay. It reminds me a little of the Viking HQ in Basel, where 3 countries meet there too. This is the world's largest waterfall system. 275 cascades are spread across a gulf almost 2 miles across, and you'll have a chance to traverse the rapids in a rib. So sailing on, a third of the classic landfalls on the South American coast, we're now coming to Montevideo. This is Uruguay's capital city, and it's known for its lush parks, sweeping vistas and architecture. And you'll also notice a temperature change, because Montevideo is blessed with a subtropical climate. And animal lovers will not want to miss a visit to one of the largest protected colonies of sea lions and fur seals. You can venture into the southern Atlantic Ocean in the nature reserve in Uruguay's Coastal Islands National Park, known as Sea Wolves Island. So from Montevideo, we'll be sailing out across the South Atlantic, a little further east and south, down to the British archipelago that is 350 miles off the coast of South America, called the Falkland Islands. We'll have 2 days to explore these sparsely inhabited but very rich in wildlife and remote islands, and we'll be based in Stanley, the capital of the Falklands. So we'll be encouraging you to get your cameras ready at this point, as there's so much unspoiled nature and diverse fauna to photograph around the Falkland Islands. There are some 60 distinct bird species breeding across the archipelago, including 5 different species of penguins and some of the world's largest colonies of albatrosses, including the black-browed albatross. You can discover the thriving penguin populations and abundant bird species at Bluff Cove Lagoon, which is a private wildlife haven quite close to Stanley. And at this point on the voyage, we're going very much into the wildlife observation component. And so I'd like to show you a short video about the different fauna that you may encounter across the voyage.
At the far ends of the Earth, in some of the most extreme environments imaginable, live some of the world's most resilient creatures. Antarctica's nearly unlivable conditions for most of the year are well documented. Yet life abounds during the short but spectacular summer season on the White Continent. The oceans are filled with fascinating life, including some of the world's largest living mammals. With their distinctive humps and unique black and white tail patterns, humpback whales are easy to spot in these frigid waters. Humpbacks come to Antarctica's polar waters each summer to feed on massive shoals of tiny krill, a nearly microscopic relative of the shrimp, before migrating to warmer waters, where they give birth to their young. Other marine mammals, like the distinctive leopard seal, named for its black spotted coat, also call these waters home. These big pinnipeds can weigh over 800 pounds. They're hunters living on smaller seals, penguins, birds, fish and squid. The only predator they fear is the mighty killer whale. On shore, you won't see large, iconic animals like those of the Arctic. In fact, the largest terrestrial inhabitant here is but half an inch long, the wingless midge, an insect. However, what you will find in adorable abundance are penguins. Of the 17 species of penguin in the world, 7 spend time in Antarctica. Of these, 2 species are found nowhere else. The bountiful Adelie penguin, with an estimated population of 2.5 million pairs. And a rarer sighting on your expedition, the regal emperor penguin, who also calls Antarctica home year-round. These majestic creatures can grow to 4.5 feet tall. Penguins have evolved over time to swim rather than fly. With their wings acting as flippers, they glide gracefully through the Antarctic seas. Research has shown their waddling to be a highly effective means of walking on snow and ice. And when they toboggan across slick snow on their stomachs, they can outpace a running human. At the top of the world, near the North Pole, you'll encounter a whole different variety of wildlife. Camouflaged beautifully against a snowy landscape is the quintessential symbol of Arctic life, the polar bear. Ursus maritimus, the maritime bear. It's born on land but beautifully adapted for moving across floating ice and swimming open waters. The polar bear prefers a diet of seals, but when the sea ice is scarce, they adapt their diet and eat almost anything with protein, including reindeer. The walrus is one of the Arctic's most lovable creatures, with its whiskers, tusks and rotund physique. These same qualities, however, have made them a prized commodity over the centuries to the region's indigenous people, who've hunted walrus for their meat, blubber, tusks and skin. You may spot walruses in their preferred shallow waters, feasting on clams and other mollusks. The Svalbard reindeer also calls this rugged environment home. They live a nomadic life in a never-ending search for food, covering as much as 5,000 kilometers a year, in their quest to build the fat reserves they'll need to survive winter. Connecting the two ends of the Earth is one tireless creature, the tiny Arctic tern. This ambitious little bird travels up to 44,000 miles annually, the longest migration in the world, from the Arctic to Antarctica and back again, logging more than 1 million miles in its lifetime. Whether you explore the Arctic or Antarctica, you're sure to be both humbled and awed by the majestic wildlife you'll find on these extraordinary expeditions.
From the Falklands, we will then be sailing further south and go sailing across the Scotia Sea, and specifically the Drake Passage. This legendary route was named after its discoverer, Sir Francis Drake, and the passage takes you from the tip of South America into Antarctica, across the Antarctic convergence. This is where the sea temperatures will plunge to near freezing, across just a few hours change in sailing time. And in the Southern Ocean, you may glimpse your first iceberg, and possibly a humpback whale. Your ship will navigate through the Drake Passage as we head to and from the Antarctic continent. So, we're now in Antarctica, known as the White Continent. The Drake Passage may have been a little bit rough, but the ship is beautifully set up to make your voyage as comfortable as possible. And once within the islands and the ice of Antarctica, it is very calm again. And here you can soak up the majestic beauty of this isolated corner of the globe. You keep an eye out for whales in their natural habitat, and look for a myriad seals, penguins, seabirds such as petrels, colourful lichens, rocky beaches and basalt cliffs. So you'll have 2 nights in Antarctica. For your shore and off-ship excursions, we offer complimentary use of all our speciality outerwear and expedition equipment, so you can fully experience your destination in comfort. This could include kayaking amongst the sea ice and glaciers, hiking on a snow-covered beach, and you'll be amazed by the majesty of your surroundings. So after the Antarctic, we head north back across the Drake Passage, and we're heading back to South America, where your journey with Viking will conclude in Ushuaia, the world's southernmost city. After breakfast on board, many of you will disembark and proceed to the airport for your return flight home. Or perhaps you have opted to continue our voyage with one of our extension packages. Now this image is just round the corner from Ushuaia, the city itself, showing that in the Beagle Channel there is wildlife everywhere, with the magnificent Andes behind on the bigger island of Tierra del Fuego, very evocative end of Patagonia. After a long voyage, you may wish to continue the Odyssey with a post-extension package. So we have arranged a 5-night Gateway to Patagonia package here, which explores both the Chilean and Argentine sides of Patagonia, which is an extraordinary region. It's one of my favorite places on Earth. You can admire the rugged peaks of Torre del Paine National Park, blue waters of Lake Argentino, the Calafate Balcony, and the enormous Moreno Glacier, the Perito Moreno, which is the world's only advancing glacier. Well, thank you very much for your attention as we went through the Arctic to Antarctica voyage itinerary. I do hope that you enjoyed the presentation and are enthusing about the possibility of travelling with us. We hope to welcome you aboard sometime in the near future. There's not going to be a Q&A session after this presentation. However, if you had any questions whatsoever, please don't hesitate to use the Viking.TV portal, and your queries will go to our team, who will be able to respond by email. I'd like to finish now this presentation by showing one last video. It is a short presentation about the flora that you may encounter on this voyage. So thank you once again, and until next time.
At the top and bottom of the world, amongst the grandeur of polar landscapes, some of nature's most precious treasures are hidden in plain sight. The field microscope is your gateway into another world and quickly changes your perspective on everything, as it reveals layer upon layer of fascinating details that one would otherwise easily miss. In the Arctic, the island archipelago of Svalbard is a wonderland of rugged terrain and massive glaciers. Heralding the Arctic spring are hundreds of species of small flowering plants. Like the delicate Svalbard poppy, the national plant of Svalbard. It thrives in this extreme climate by using hairs on its stem to keep it warm. And its flower swivels to maximize sunlight during the short polar growing season. Variations of saxifraga grow in mats throughout Svalbard, The name is derived from the Latin name for stonebreaker. These hardy plants have flowers ranging from white to pink to purple. And in the Arctic region, they've long been a food source for indigenous people due to their high vitamin C content. This region looked much different countless millennia ago during warmer periods. The fossils of ancient trees and long extinct animals speak to a time when Svalbard was subtropical and humid. Time and nature transformed those forests and animals into the large coal deposits that are plentiful within the archipelago. At the bottom of the world, in even more forbidding conditions, Antarctica is home to its own equally fascinating ecosystems. The soil is poor, the growing season short, and there are no bees or bats to pollinate. Still, there is some interesting, resilient plant life that thrives. While lichens and moss represent the majority of Antarctic flora, there's one hearty plant that defies the odds: Antarctic hairgrass, most commonly seen amongst the penguin colonies. Somehow, it's evolved to endure the most extreme weather on Earth. The beautiful Antarctic pearlwort resembles a southern version of one of the Arctic's saxifraga, growing in ground cover cushions and producing a tiny, sunny yellow flower. The flora of the Arctic and Antarctica offer a glimpse into a complex living world. Every bit as impressive in its own way as the forests of Earth's more temperate zones. You're sure to be both humbled and awed by the majestic life you'll find on these extraordinary expeditions.